I'm Robert, and welcome to my channel, where I discuss everything automated algorithmic trading, or simply algo trading. Today I'm going to release an update to my MACD module on the Jackrabbit Framework. But this update is far more advanced. It is the compound MACD. So let's get straight to it. Now that I have added it to my chart, and you will find a link in the alpha area of the support server. Let's get into the details and talk about this wonderful new indicator. What you are looking at is 6 moving averages. I know it seems hard to tell, but it is indeed 6 moving averages. And we're going to go through all of this very clearly. Let's start by zooming in the chart a little. And we see the fast line, slow line, and then the delta, or typically what would usually be called a histogram. But we see only 3 lines here. This is where the compound part of this strategy comes in play. Each component is made up of 2 different moving averages, with the exception of the delta, which is just 1 moving average, but then the 6th one is actually hidden, which is a momentum one. So let's actually go into the settings and see how this plays out. So we go into the settings, and we see the standard Jackrabbit framework and layout that we are used to. But if you scroll down, you will find that we have the fast moving average alpha and the fast moving average beta. So we have 2 different moving averages set to double EMA at the moment. We're going to change this and see how it affects the settings. So let's go with an RMA for the fast moving average alpha. And let's go with a SMA for the fast moving average beta. And we can already see the change in the chart. So now let's go down to the slow moving averages. And let's make them really slow with an SMA and a triple SMMA. And you'll see yet again even more changes to the chart. Now we've just changed 4 moving averages. But we're not done yet. If we go down further, we find out that the smoothing moving average, which controls the delta, is currently set to none. So let's set this one to a simple EMA. And we'll see the green line change. Now let's set the length of the delta look back to 31. And yet again, after a few minutes, you will see the change on the chart. And now we move to the momentum, which is currently at EMA at 288. Let's change this to a momentum of, let's go with a volume weighted moving average. And let's give it something a little smaller. And now we have yet another change in the chart. And we can of course change the moving average itself by inverting the signal. Meaning buys become sells and sells become buys with the inversion aspect. So as we can see from the chart, with each change we've made of all 6 moving averages, we can really control how this MACD performs and get situations that is simply not possible with any other variant of MACD. For now, we're going to turn this off though. And as you can see, we even have a confirmation if you want to go into that route. But for now, we have a pretty good representation of what we are dealing with. So let's add the DCA module to this and see just what we come up with. Going back to the main chart. Now, of course, we're going to go to the DCA. Again, these are in the Jackrabbit support area. Now that we have the DCA loaded and tuned, we can see with the compound MACD settings as they are at the moment, that this strategy made a 2.13% average profit, with the last profit being 2.19%. And it took a maximum of 3 purchases per cycle. So let's actually go back through the chart and see how that played out. And see just where the actual purchases took place. Okay, here is a purchase. Now you can tune this to be as aggressive or defensive as you want. This is, after all, Jackrabbit, and it always strives to look at the market in different contexts. So as we can see how the market unfolds with different levels of indicators, some of which may only be a very short run. This can, of course, be coupled with other strategies such as the volume moving average, or an RSI, or a Bollinger's, or any other combination of techniques. And this DCA is using the classic 1.5% deviation with a 2% take profit. So there's nothing spectacular about the DCA. It's all driven by the MACD. But let's look at a slightly different variation that's more complicated, where we use a volume metric as a means of testing and checking the various constraints of the strategy. Now this is a significantly more aggressive compound MACD, and I'll bring up the settings so we can actually take a look at them. Going down to the alpha line, we can see that the fast alpha is 13, the slow alpha is 23. Very aggressive prime number settings, and I'm using the typical double EMA that is standard default for the compound, just to demonstrate that you don't need to go out of your way to make it insanely complicated. And we're moving to the slow alpha and slow beta, a 23-31, with the smoothing also being a double EMA at 7. The momentum is just a simple SMA. So we can see, looking at the chart, just how simple this strategy can be, or how complex it can be with just a matter of a few changes. I encourage you to really test it, because it can actually get into situations that are simply not realistically possible with the standard MACD indicator. As you can see from the chart, when trading Matic, it did 6 total trades, but the highest number of trades per cycle is only 3. So it managed to do an exceptional job of limiting the exposure. And we can see between the combination of the compound MACD and the volume by tracking and looking at the market in a very specific context, we have really gained a massive advantage in controlling exactly what we are looking at. So, let's take a look at a few other entries. Looking at ADA, we see we have made 3 cycles, and the highest number of purchases per cycle is 3. ADA is a rather interesting asset lately, and it is expected to go into a bullish state over the next couple of weeks. Whether or not it will is yet to be seen, but nonetheless, it is here to make money. So let's keep going and see how well this works out with other assets. And we will, of course, finish up with my most detested asset of all. Now you'll see that the USDT versus USD is slightly different, and that USDT only made 1 trade cycle, and it had a maximum of 5. It is still very reasonable for what this asset is. And that really is the point of the compound MACD, to give you an advantage over MACD drastically. So we'll go through a few more of these. And you'll see that most of them are all staying very low within the maximum number of purchases. That is a critical point. You want to keep your purchases controlled. You don't want your purchases to get out of hand. So by maintaining this, you are able to force this type of a situation. So let's get straight to the asset that has always been a problem for me. No matter how I trade it, it's always caused me to lose money. Yes, we are talking about Raven, the coin that I detest the most in existence. And yet, even with Raven, compound MACD brings it under control with a maximum number of 3 positions. Of course, this is the 1 minute, and it's likely to be more than that under longer time frames, but overall, this is manageable. I could easily see a 10 or 20 limit constraint to this asset and be able to trade it comfortably. The fact that it has made 12% profit over the last 3 days is something that makes me happy. And this asset very rarely makes me happy. So play with the compound MACD. Test it. See just how well it works under different situations. See how the combination of moving averages actually affects the ability of the asset. For example, let's go to a weighted moving average, and let's go to an EMA. Let's go upside down and see how that changes the profitability of this asset. And you'll notice that even though I have a slightly higher maximum, it's still something I'm comfortable with. It's something that gives me a way of controlling my risk. And that really is the whole cornerstone of what the compound MACD represents versus the traditional version. More control to govern how you dictate your risks to be handled, even if you go with a more aggressive stance. Let's take, for example, the DCA module, and let's adjust it from step to price and from defensive to aggressive. And we will see just how well it does, in fact, control risks even under such an extreme level. So even with an openly aggressive approach, we only have a maximum purchase of 5 at the moment and 3 trade cycles. Now, of course, you can make MACD even more aggressive, and let's see how that looks. Let's take the compound MACD. Let's give it a triple EMA for the fast alpha, and we have an impact immediately on the statistics. Okay. We can see that even if we try to go aggressive, it has deliberately stopped its ability from just being insane, because we can see by the bottom chart that there's no signals that comply. So let's find a way of getting aggressiveness without setting it hyper aggressive. Let's go with the DEMA, and let's take the beta to a volume weighted. And you can see, even with just crazy approaches, it keeps control of the market very nicely. It does an exceptional job. Let's go down to our smoothing, and let's take it down to a 7. Really kick up the aggression. And here we go. Now we're getting to see some aggression. But in that process, we are still showing very limited aggressiveness in the number of purchases. A standard MACD would easily have double the maximum number of purchases. So we have still a constraint that gives us control. And we can pick and dial in that risk appropriately. So take a look at the strategy, test it out, play with it. Check out how it works with the RSI, which is really an amazing treat. It can do exceptionally well. I'm going to show you a chart that I've been working with that is really very nice. It's for a market that typically is traditionally difficult in a lot of respects, but it brings it under control quite appreciatively. And it uses the RSI MACD combination with volume. And you can see that the total number of trades and the maximum buys are incredibly controlled. So check this out, look at it, try different combinations, and let me know what you think. Leave a comment below on what combinations you found really work well. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you aren't subscribed, please subscribe for future videos like this. Thank you for watching.